Allora, vogliamo iniziare? Possiamo chiudere la porta per piacere?
Well
Così
then, can we
direi
start and
iniziamo.
maybe close the door so we can start?
Poi chi arriva, arriva, via la suoneria.
If somebody else arrives, they're always on time and we can switch
Via la suoneria, no, io l'ho
on
appena
by
tolta.
phones. I have just muted mine.
Allora, ben ritrovati per chi c'era già questa mattina,
Welcome
ben
back
arrivato
for
per chi
those
invece
who were here this
ci
morning
ha
and
appena
welcome
raggiunti.
to all the people who just joined us.
Iniziamo la sessione
We are
pomeridiana con
starting
un breve
the
video
afternoon session
sulla
with
storia
a short
delle
video on the history
sugli itinerari culturali.
of
In questo momento.
cultural roots.
Ok. Prego dalla regia, partiamo col video.
Please, can you please start the video?
Eccoci.
Ok, allora ringrazio infinitamente la dottoressa
Here we are.
Albertanza per essere qui con
Thank
noi oggi.
you, Mrs. Albertanza, for being here with us today. Many of you might know her. She is one of the top experts at international level
L'ho pagato.
in the whole planet,
L'ho pagato.
an interplanetary level. I paid him for that. She is one of the top experts of the cultural roots of the Council of Europe. And apart from this video and picture, she will take us through the origin and the history of 3 decades of this program. Edward, you really deserve this journey. I only came here for you. This is going to be very boring.
Ve lo dico subito così.
And I want to tell you beforehand so you can relax. Because actually, going back in time, you know, the video is our present in a way, what we are, where we are at the moment. But it was necessary to try and understand how we got there.
Questo presente. Gli itinerari in questo momento sono 40
The routes at the moment are 49,
certificata poche settimane fa.
with the transference that was certified short time ago, the only one that was certified this year.
Di questa sala.
And I am going to make some remarks that I don't want you to spread beyond this room, because out of 13 routes, only 1 was approved, and that is something that really shakes our conscience. But there can be many reasons.
Siamo fermi un secondo al presente.
If we
33 itinerari
stop in the present, 33 routes go through Italy. Eduardo is trying to understand how many cross Piedmont, but many of them.
credo che abbia già un
Mrs. Beltramo already has a list of routes that cross
ve la
Piedmont.
con la Lombardia che
And Lombardy also has
itinerari ma non sono
quite some routes. They maintain they have the top number of routes, but I'm not convinced. And France has 31. So I'm sorry, we are winning over France. As for UNESCO sites, as you might know, we have 58. We are also the first country by number of subscribers. This is a lot of work. It's a burden, but it's also satisfactory. And there's a lot of workload that is necessary for this, not just to keep the number. There are no ranks here, no winners. But as Eduardo said this morning, this thing, that certification, is the proof that certainly all the papers were fine, beautiful, colorful, and nice, but now is when the real work starts. So let me suggest that we travel in time. I will try to be quick, and this starts out of an extraordinary afternoon with the person who taught me the little things I know, Michel Tomatonet. We spent 2 beautiful afternoons on a terrace in Paris, speaking of the past. So it's going to be boring, but it was certified. So, which means that I am not going to say too many silly things. And, of course, I have to use that. Right, important dates. 1984-87, a program is prepared. Let me just open a personal note just to tell you that the Council of Europe had a long history in 1949, which is made of many agreements. Some of them were already reminded this morning, the Faro Agreement, the Landscape Agreement, but the European Cultural Agreement, the first on the topic, was adopted, and you might not know it. It was the first agreement signed by the new member states that entered the Council of Europe. So even before entering the Council, the states could sign the cultural agreement. That was the first international document signed by former Soviet countries or countries that came from the dissolution of Yugoslavia. So adoption and enforcement, and this is a summary, and also the Declaration of Santiago of Compostela. These are the foundations. This is something you saw this morning, the building of the Council of Europe, which last year started having a change in the number of states that belong to it, and I'm happy that I'm in Turin, as last year we closed the Italian presidency of the Council of Europe here in Venaria in May, and 1 month after the Ukraine invasion, Italy took up the job of voting for the exclusion of Russia from the Council of Europe, and we were the only international organization until today, due to the competences of this organization, which froze Russia. So, the origin of the program. Michel tells me that in 1984 we had already started, but here I have someone in the front line that is going to tell me if I am wrong. Mr. Berti, he was the director of the Cultural Affairs Institute, so I must be very careful. And here you find the term political resolution of the Parliamentary Assembly. The Assembly of the Council of Europe, as you might know, it joins MEPs from all the member states. And in this period, they decided that it was necessary to start dealing with these topics. Eduardo, how long can I speak? 7, 8 minutes, maybe? Great. After which, in 1987, the Council for Cultural Cooperation decided and adopted this resolution. So they started their way. Discovery through journey. You see that cultural tourism has always been present in a way, improving the awareness of cultural places in Europe. And you all know that when we speak of Europe, we actually mean an organization that goes from Portugal up to Azerbaijan. So nothing to do with the small European Union countries. We are many more and much more diversified culturally. So the idea of travels as a visual component, education, and human experience. So the values have always been present since 1887. And the foundation of action, a European cultural identity. We might be speaking for hours of this, but we can't. We have to understand if a European cultural identity exists. I believe so, but you also have to imagine that the Council of Europe started after World War II in 1949, so it was a set of countries and a new political arrangement of Europe. So they thought it was necessary to start creating a common spirit. So the citizenship aim of the Council of Europe was to make visible and enhance the common cultural identity, the study of languages, history. There is, in the Council of Europe, a section that is dedicated to reading history books and compare them to see how some historical events are written and interpreted, and then we write to the ambassadors of those countries to make some things amended. Then the evolution of the program starts, the Granada Agreement, until Faro in 2005. The inclusion of the cultural landscape and some topics for the famous Florence Agreement of the year 2000. And let's go on. The program is started, and shortly before, the Berlin Wall had crumbled. So you can imagine how many political and cultural changes were going on. Dependency of the division of the heritage of the Congress and local and regional authorities. We have a representative of them here, so she might also tell us a lot of things. And then in 1987, we moved to the division of the Cultural Committee of the Council of Europe. I won't tell you how all the committees have been changing over the years and what the current situation is. I will just tell you that we had culture and heritage in the beginning. We met twice per year. Now we only have one committee that meets once per year, and they deal with culture, landscape, and heritage. What do they do? We don't know, but it's alive. We will wait and see. The launch of the rural habitat route, which has not continued, and then we also had the Hanseatic and Viking sites. You know that Nordic countries are always very united when they make proposals, and they also followed them up. What happened in the year 2000? You see the responsibility of the committees, culture and heritage, but actually the one that decided was the one that I was lucky enough to chair, which was the Committee for Culture. They decided what routes could be approved and what couldn't. And we will see what changed. Now these three committees together record the subscription of a route, which is decided by the members of the partial agreement, but we will see that later. Several recommendations were made. I am not going into detail, but what also starts changing is the place where the Institute for Routes is placed, as Luxembourg, with wide availability, also with a financial availability, made available the Neumünster Abbey, a beautiful place, and from the small offices we had in the council, we could create the Institute for Cultural Routes. You can now see a celebration of our anniversary and the declaration of Priam-Velay, remembered for some beautiful lentils, green lentils, the first time I had them in my life, but also for this wonderful declaration. Then we started working on several resolutions. In 2013, 2 were issued, 66 and 67, and this year, 1 more will be issued. And I will tell you about it if we have time, but maybe not, because otherwise you won't invite me anymore. So I started working on itineraries in 1997 in Delphi, in Greece. There's a second forum, and there we somehow decide that we create the Institute of Routes the way it is set up and in the rooms where it still is now. And this is important. The opening in Sibiu and in Romani of a resource center that unfortunately was then closed. It was wanted by the mayor of Sibiu, current president of the Republic of Romania, but for some reasons the center was closed. There was a connection with the ancient population of Luxembourg, the Saxons, that had founded the city of Sibiu. And that was very important because it was an antenna in a series of countries that are very interesting for the routes. And then there was a great cooperation between the Council of Europe and the European Commission. And cooperation also means some funds that are exchanged, that come from them. So we never mentioned money before, but maybe we should. How do we make a living? And how do we carry out our programs? At some point, the Council of Europe, as many international organizations see, they don't have much money to continue. After some tests that I'm not going to tell you about, we create a partial agreement. What is a partial agreement? Some countries join and finance the program. In the Council of Europe, there were already partial agreements before. You might know Euroimage, that is the partial agreement for cinema, or the partial agreement for pharmacopoeia. Maybe that is one of the best known. So we also created a partial agreement for cultural routes with this decision of the Committee of Ministers, and then some regulations that were adopted later. The reference resolutions that we mentioned before are still in force, although they were amended from time to time. They are 66 and 67, dating from 2013, and you can see them quoted in many documents. This year, in April, we will we have resolution number 2 of the Committee of Ministers that amends the rules for the mention of cultural route and also the rules for the routes. I have nothing against the partial agreement. What I'm going to tell you is a personal analysis, and it doesn't belong to the ministry where I worked. I find that the analysis, and I will ask Mrs. Beltrame if she agrees, as we are both experts, I feel that it is becoming too political. The assessment of an itinerary is turning into something political. For 7 years, I dealt with UNESCO sites, and I ought to say that at the time, this happened already. So there were some exchange votes. I'm going to vote this for you, and you vote for mine. We were forced to vote for Carcassonne, despite it didn't have criteria number 1 of authenticity, because France voted the Aeolic Islands. But no kidding, lately I have felt that the assessment is taking into account other things that are not the genuine quality of a cultural route. Or maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure. Silvia, how do you feel about it? She remains silent because she's much more diplomatic than I am. She is not using the microphone, unfortunately. She cannot be translated. Yeah, I'm convinced of that. Of course. As you called me, I will be glad to reply. Yes, lately that happened in some assessment where the experts highlighted some aspects that in some cases can be reviewed. Also keeping in mind that when there is a new candidacy of a cultural route, also some time is necessary. It takes time before it turns into something real, and you need some experience. Let me remind you that the assessment report is requested as a basis for later debate and for the final decision that is made by the member states. So for sure, some values also depend on the weight of the countries. Let me just add one thing. This morning, we quickly mentioned the UNESCO sites. So I was asked what the main difference was. There's a huge difference between the list dating from 1973, the list of monuments of UNESCO, because then they were looking for unicity, world unicity. This is not true for the routes. We are not looking for a unique quality. We just allocate to the places of at least 3 countries, otherwise you can't certify them, other values that are the values of the Council of Europe. So I understand that you would like to enter the UNESCO list. Why do they aim at that? At the moment, it is the most widely known. If you speak to anybody who is in a taxi with you, the UNESCO list is known by everybody in the world, which means that from 1995, when we created the UNESCO group, we worked well at awareness-raising level. The list of itineraries, well, if you say Santiago, someone wakes up. Francigena, a little better, but we don't go beyond that. So I believe that the commitment we should take up, and you that were certified now is a perfect and total communication. You have to make yourself known. And let me just open another note. Also, in the UNESCO list, there's something that is quite close to the cultural route. That is the transnational routes. These are topics, and I see Raffaella Caria nodding, because there was a recent example, the thermal water route, which was certified by the Council of Europe, and it is now a serial site, which means uniqueness in each country that has it, but at the same time the topic is the same. So there's not much difference between a serial site and a cultural route. What's the difference? The values and the reference agreements that are our guidance. Thank you very much, and sorry for boring you.
Thank you, Roberta. It was not boring at all. On the contrary, it was very interesting. And understanding the past is fundamental to understand the present and be able to imagine a better future. As for the little part of the world we deal with, yes, the Italian state, and I'm happy I'm on streaming, they cannot send me away, they wouldn't. I must say that we used to have a national coordination, the Consulta Itinerari, the route committee, and I made my part in creating this together with Spain and France, and there was a minister who said that it was not necessary. We also passed the law number 7, that is now the number 77. However, it provided some financing to projects of new routes, and law 77 is now funding exclusively the UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Why? I don't know. It is just a political matter, and it is a major mistake for Italy. Spain and France are working very well. France, last week, was presenting all the routes that pass through France. And, well, why? I couldn't say why. If I may, I would like to invite the regions to list all the routes, mainly cultural routes that pass through the region, to pass ad hoc laws, just like the one in Veneto and in Lombardy regions, Tuscany, maybe. So the regions should do so. Thank you. I must comment on this. Talking about our personal experience, I would say that we entered this world of cultural routes last year as Historic Cafés Route, Historic Cafés Route, and before being acknowledged, we didn't have much information. Over the last months, while organizing this conference, we realized that this topic for the moment is something that is a niche topic. But I must say that the tourist statistics say that this cultural part is growing very fast, and the cultural tourist looks for UNESCO sites, first of all, and then, secondly, the cultural routes. So it is quite appealing. And this is the heart of today's meetings, to shed the light on the routes passing through this territory, the Piedmont Region in particular, with the support, as we said, of local institutions.
Adesso passiamo a
Okay, let's move on to a video message
Alberto Bosque Coelho,
recorded by Alberto Bosque Coelho,
il ideatore fondatore
who is the founder and coordinator
di questo progetto
of a very interesting project that is a worldwide project, the Museum of Tourism. And again, there's
quanti di
aims at the same direction, which is to provide more focus on culture, cultural travels and tourism. And this is a spread museum that is open to new participation, so they're looking for new participations. So we can
il video sarà in inglese.
watch the video. There will be in English and there will be an Italian translation for the people in the room. Thank you. Salve, mi chiamo Alberto Bosche e sono il coordinatore e fondatore del Museo del Turismo, un'iniziativa no profit che è presente in tutto il mondo, in 4 continenti, in 14 paesi, online e offline. Abbiamo pensato che potesse essere interessante per voi, l'Associazione dei Caffè Storici di Torino e del Piemonte, perché è una bella iniziativa che potrebbe essere utile e interessante, appunto. Innanzitutto complimenti per tutto quello che state facendo nell'associazione, dalla città del caffè come proposta turistica, risorsa turistica. È molto importante quello che state facendo lì a Torino, in Piemonte, con i caffè storici, quindi davvero complimenti. State facendo grandi cose e credo che possa essere un ottimo esempio per il resto dell'Europa e del mondo, vista l'importanza dei caffè storici. Davvero, complimenti. Che cos'è il Museo del Turismo? È un'iniziativa no profit che è considerata il più grande museo del mondo, finché qualcuno non dirà il contrario. Perché questo museo è il più grande del mondo? Perché è diffuso in tutto il mondo. È presente in 14 paesi e sui social media in 17 lingue. Quindi è considerato un museo online e offline. Passiamo alla parte offline. È considerato un museo diffuso, è una parola italiana questa che è molto difficile da tradurre in altre lingue, per esempio in inglese, ma perché è un museo diffuso? Perché è presente in tutto il mondo. Ci sono più di 100 sale, come quella che vedete qui sullo schermo. Questa è a Siviglia, l'altra è a Cordova. Ci sono sale in Romania, in Egitto, in Giappone, in India, in Uruguay, in Argentina, in Brasile, Messico, in tantissimi paesi. E in queste sale vediamo oggetti che seguono una sorta di linguaggio tematico. Per esempio, quella a destra è l'Hotel Selu a Cordova e si può vedere la storia di questo hotel e di questo museo appunto a Cordova. Il nostro obiettivo è quello di rendere omaggio a tutti i predecessori nel settore, di ricordare la storia del turismo, di recuperare materiale che potrebbe essere perso o dimenticato, dando prestigio al settore del turismo ovunque. Ci sono 4 manager, 4 responsabili, e io sono uno di questi, e naturalmente ci sono molti collaboratori per i social media, i nostri community manager, e altri che sono più di 400 persone in tutto il mondo che collaborano con questo museo. Come vi ho detto, c'è il museo offline, quindi le sale appunto locali, fisiche. E in queste sale è possibile vedere la storia di alcuni aspetti del settore turistico, la storia di una persona, di un'azienda, la storia di una destinazione, di qualsiasi cosa. Per esempio ci sono già 2 sale che raccontano la storia di caffè storici. Una è il Caffè Santa Cruz a Coimbra, forse lo conoscete, e l'altra è il Caffè d'Indurra a Gijón. È possibile andare a vedere quindi una piccola esposizione dove si può scoprire la storia di questi caffè e cose molto importanti per il settore turistico. E poi i nostri social media, il nostro museo online. Abbiamo la nostra pagina internet e i social media in 17 lingue diverse, tra cui l'italiano. Per esempio in italiano abbiamo una pagina Instagram, il Museo del Turismo, e Facebook, il Museo del Turismo. Abbiamo la nostra pagina web, themuseumoftourism.org. Abbiamo le nostre sale fisiche, come vi ho detto, circa 100 sale. Potete vedere l'Hotel Doña Maria a Siviglia, il Museo Gaudí a León, il Westin Palace di Madrid. Ecco alcuni esempi, alcune anche in Italia, per esempio il Museo Castello d'Albertis a Genova, l'Hotel dei Mille a Genova, l'Hotel Mediterraneo a Firenze. Sono tantissime, il comune di Praiano in Campania, eccetera. Potete andare sulla pagina web e vedere tutte le sale che abbiamo. In Argentina, in Genova, Portogallo, nelle sedi di alcune aziende, nelle università del turismo. Per esempio, quindi sono molti luoghi legati al turismo dove è possibile scoprire alcuni aspetti della storia del turismo. Per esempio, qui sulla destra potete scoprire la sala 76, che è piuttosto vicina al Piemonte, il Museo Fisogni, per conoscere la storia delle pompe di benzina in tutto il mondo. È un museo straordinario che racconta la storia appunto di queste pompe di benzina storiche. Altri esempi di sale che si possono vedere. Qui vedete un po' la situazione di tutte le sale che abbiamo al momento. I social media, non so se ci sia un'altra iniziativa al mondo che ha così tante pagine sui social media. Sono 17 lingue, quindi diamo informazioni sulla storia del turismo in tutte queste lingue. Ne siamo molto orgogliosi e siamo molto grati alle persone che si occupano appunto dei nostri social media. Abbiamo 26 community manager. Questi sono i media appunto che usiamo per ogni lingua. Potete vedere il simbolo di Instagram, per esempio, e significa che abbiamo un Instagram in portoghese. E poi c'è il press clipping, quindi i ritagli di giornale, quindi gli articoli in cui siamo apparsi solo su carta. Naturalmente abbiamo più di 400 apparizioni sulla stampa in tutto il mondo e alcune persone collaborano con noi, per esempio in Italia, ad esempio Travel Quotidiano ci aiuta molto il nostro museo e ci sono altre società come il Touring Club italiano o Fratelli Alinari che si occupano di questo nella regione toscana. Tantissime persone collaborano con noi con uno scopo comune. Tramandare, questa è un'altra parola italiana molto utile e piuttosto difficile da tradurre in inglese. Tramandare la storia del turismo, per esempio. Quindi appunto tramandare la nostra storia. Potete vedere qui tutti i ritagli di giornale, potete vedere tutti i link in cui il museo è apparso. Bene, quindi come aderire al museo? Ci sono più di 400 persone in tutto il mondo, come dicevo, si può donare materiale, scrivere su alcuni aspetti della storia del museo, organizzare una sala presso la propria sede, presso la propria agenzia di viaggi, azienda, per raccontare la storia, per esempio, dell'attività o di una destinazione, qualunque cosa. Le sale sono tantissime, per questo cresciamo ogni giorno. Quindi come aprire una sala? Potete vedere tutto questo nella nostra pagina web, themuseumoftourism.org. Ecco come aprire una sala, di nuovo. E queste sono alcune cose che abbiamo visto in queste esposizioni, quindi riviste, opuscoli, guide di viaggio, foto, cartoline, eccetera. Questo è il Museo del Turismo e questi sono i nostri contatti. Siamo molto orgogliosi di questa iniziativa, molto orgogliosi di essere i coordinatori di tutte queste persone in tutto il mondo che hanno lo stesso obiettivo, lo stesso scopo, parlare della storia del turismo e rendere omaggio alle persone che lavoravano nel settore turistico prima di noi. Quindi complimenti di nuovo a tutti i caffè che hanno aderito a questa associazione per aver tratto vantaggio da questa storia. Dovete esserne orgogliosi. Purtroppo noi non abbiamo qualcosa di simile in Spagna. Vista la grande storia che avete dei caffè storici in Piemonte, assolutamente approfittatene. Vi invito a fare molto a riguardo, perché questa è una risorsa turistica molto importante e mi congratulo per tutto quello che state facendo. Grazie mille, grazie per l'opportunità e siamo a vostra disposizione. Grazie, ciao.
Questo è. Gli riporto poi gli applausi. Era molto dispiaciuto di non poter essere con noi.
He was very sorry that he couldn't be with us. I am going to tell you about your appreciation. This was a project that can be adapted to the history of Eat Route. Actually, with our Caffè, my cafe here, we are organizing to do that. I have also invited other colleagues, and as far as historical cafes are concerned, we found out that they do have an open-air museum. They have a lot of antiques and things from the royal house. Actually, it looks like you are entering a museum. Now, let me ask Andrea Archina to join me. He is a member of the Via Francigena Bureau and mayor of Avigliana. So he's also making use of the table. Would you like to stay here? And you have a short video on the Francigena ways. So let's just watch the video now.
I think what makes the Via Francigena different from other pilgrimages is the international flavor of it. Because when you have 5 countries involved, then there are at least 5 different cultures you're going to experience. So there's British, French, there is Swiss, Italian, and even a culture in the Vaticano, or in the Vatican.
La Via Francigena, comme les chemins de Compostelle, sont des chemins fédérateurs au niveau de l'Europe.
È sempre un incontro importante quello col pellegrino, perché racconto il tipo di condivisione che c'è con chi cammina è particolarmente emotivo, semplice, umano.
Faccio il pellegrino perché continuo nella mia missione di pellegrinaggio. Ho camminato tanto, adesso aiuto i pellegrini a camminare.
Beh, direi una bella cartolina, insomma, per iniziare.
A very nice postcard to start with. Actually, this video was made in 2021 to celebrate the 20 years of the association, and there was a group of walkers starting from Canterbury and reaching Santa Maria of Leuca with all the pictures and shots that were taken to condense in a couple of minutes the spirit that we are carrying on. Let me give you the love of our president, Mr. Tedeschi. He couldn't be here, unfortunately. I'm also also closer to Turin. I live around here as the municipality of Avigliana, but I am also the vice president of the Val di Susa association, and the union has a presidency bureau which joined the Francigena Ways, which started a couple of years later than the cultural roots. So the association was born in 2001. First of all, let's see what the Via Francigena route is. We have this quote from Jacques Le Goff: if we consider reality and we look at history, there's something that's more important than soldiers and goods that cross those streets, and this thing is cultures. So I believe that the Via Francigena can actually be considered a cultural way, and this is the acknowledgement that you have also shared with us before. In 1994, we have 302,000 kilometers from Canterbury to Rome, and recently it also reaches Santa Maria di Leuca, so the pilgrims could sail for the Holy Land. And we have 5 countries: England, France, Switzerland, Italy, and the Vatican State. 16 regions, 48 provinces, and more than 700 towns. We also have 400 private businesses for production and hospitality that also represent services. So what I'm trying to do in a few slides is giving you some hints, some insights as to what it means to build activities and businesses around the acknowledgement of a route. If you want to develop it, and it seems to me that you are interested in it, you need to set up some facilities that work around it to make it known. First of all, we said that now the Via Francigena is entering the logics nearly as much as the Way of St. James. So, as I told you, it started in 2001, and after being acknowledged, it was founded by 34 founders. We have 232 members, public members, plus 92 friend associations that identify in the same values, and they perform actions that can enhance the values of the route. The headquarters is in Fidenza, and the operational offices are in Piacenza and Champlit in France. In 2007, it was recognized as réseau porteur, and in 2017, Francigena Service SRL was started. And let me focus on this now, because actually matching an association with a private company, a limited company, is something that we do to carry out its values and goals. An association might be stopped or hindered in some activities, but these are also crucial. First of all, what are the activities of Francigena Service? Well, the management of the official brand. In all these subjects, we also have a brand that might be used in a legal way, so it becomes crucial. The georeference, the maps, guides, and maintenance and signs. This doesn't mean that we materially go and do the maintenance, because there are entities on the territory that do that. But the mapping of criticalities is already functional for keeping it in good state. The planning, there's a whole work of European, national, and local planning that must be done. The communication and marketing plans, training for local entities such as we are, because we must actually increase our awareness as public entities, but also businesses, events and travels that are functional for setting up concrete initiatives for tourists, and study and research that can, over time, increase the value of the route. Around all this, approximately 24 people work. So you can understand that the structure of the association and now the limited company is becoming quite complex, also concerning the financial needs, but it is also necessary if we want to go further, if we want a quality jump and work in a wider context. So what's our mission? Making the Via Francigena known to an international audience, and we will see what our targets are. Increase slow tourism and sustainable tourism, as we said before, in addition to the cultural one, and also enhance the tangible and intangible heritage of the territories that are crossed by it. And here we have some statistics dating from 2022, after the COVID break. 87% of the travelers of Via Francigena actually prefer to walk rather than cycling. So cycling people are a low number, these are small groups. Some people travel on their own, but basically there's an average group of 3 people. So it's more men than women, but more or less it's balanced. And nationalities, the top nationalities are people from Italy, France, Spain, which is not included in the way, but we have some tourists from the UK and USA. They are interested in this sort of experience. And it is mainly walked by young people from 25 to 34, but then we also have some more people from 55 to 64, probably because they rediscover a whole set of activities that can be done outdoor, but also they have more free time for leisure. So we have many people, and we can see them with our own eyes. They leave their testimony. After retirement, they decide to wear their walking shoes and start walking to discover the territories. Of course, we have differences in seasons. The main months of departures are the summer months. But what's interesting is that, however, the association is made of pilgrims. Now they are pilgrims 4.0. They don't just go along the whole way in one shot. They discover several routes. They can take 1 week or 2 weeks, or they can break the route over time. Actually, the walker who only aim at the route have some daily goals, like 25 kilometers per day on average, which does not allow them to stay and experience the territory. They just have maybe 1 month to walk it all. But we also have another topic that is sharing the experience. We know that social networks are very important nowadays to spread and to share the experiences we had. There's also a spiritual quality. Religion continues being an important motivation for the Via Francigena. There's a cultural heritage that needs time to be experienced, and so we also have touristic activities and sightseeing. So everything that goes around the typical person must take all this into account. So this is much more than providing services to a walker that must go 25 kilometers per day. They walk less kilometers, but they look around more, and they look for services that might complete the experience. And then we have the touristic impact. We took Tuscany as an example because it was the region that opened up and paved the way, in a way. So we have seen that in the period from 2010 to 2019, there was an increase in presences in the region, but then we also have statistics around the kilometers. So this means that people are willing to move around. And what's interesting is that in all the towns that do not really have a touristic quality, the thing is that in Tuscany, despite the increase is lower in percentage compared to the 10 towns that are already touristic on their own, is twice as much for the 27 that have no tourist activity, generally speaking. So the towns that are crossed by the route benefit from it, even if their situation is not so appealing for tourism. This is why we tell them all, we tell all the entities, all the bodies that are touched, we tell them that they should join the association with a small fee, or they should join through entities that join them, like Unione Montana. These are offices where some decisions are made that have an impact. And so we might have a wider route, and that can be interesting also on an international panorama, thanks to a quality that was considered residues before the pandemics, but now it's becoming the main quality. So there's a growth of the territories around the route. And this is a potential that we should not neglect. Andrea, sorry, just a joke for you. Should we overlap the places where historical cafes are with the route? So you can just stop walking and have a coffee. Yes, sure. That would be a very good position, and we could match both things. Yes, at the end of the day, you can have lunch, have dinner, and also have a very good breakfast in the morning. That's very important for someone who walks. Of course, we would need a good coffee. And the values are environmental, social, and financial. Of course, environment is very important. We must be sustainable, and sustainability is one of the criteria that in every planning, also in Europe, must be considered, but also cultural events must be sustainable. Social, of course, the exchange that you can get from such an experience is really, really crucial with the territory. But it also provides a financial impact to the territory. Let me close by saying that, as in Val di Susa, we've been in the European Association only for a while, but we get a lot of support. On Sunday, 2,300 people walked from Avigliana to Susa, going near the Sagra of San Michele. People who came from all over Italy, they stayed in the Susa Valley for a couple of days. They experienced the territory. They went sightseeing. They ate in restaurants, also in good restaurants. These tourists generally have money to spend. And then they took walks. We have many in Italy, and this happened for 5 years already. 13% cycles the route. For some years, we had a bike lane that is called Transigena, and we have just opened the first 40 kilometers until Stoccardo, and we are now completing the 4th lot that will go up to Moncenisio. And this connects with Aida, that is the great route in northern Italy. And so we are becoming bike-friendly, but the name Transigena Bike Lane recalls all the values that I mentioned before. And lastly, the Piedmont Regional Council won a grant. There's many associations like Turismo Torino, many bodies that cooperate to increase the level of tangible and intangible accessibility. So also from the point of view of knowledge and communication, and also the tangible accessibility for disabled people. And we have actions accounting for 1,600,000 euros. We are not strongly involved from a historical point of view, but the idea that they are called transitional ways and not only one way is the idea that the beam of roads in Europe is much wider than that we have here. So it might also include the southern Via Francigena, and that is what we have done. What else? Well, you can find any information on www.viafrancigena.org, and you can have information on all the national and international bodies that we work with. As an administrator, I was really enriched by this experience. But it really casts a look on the regional planning and national planning. And I think now the private and public partnership is key to carry out quality projects. So thank you very much for having us in this beautiful seat, and good luck. Before leaving, let me just ask you a question. If you should give your advice, just one piece of advice to a route that was recently certified and so they have a lot of work ahead, what are the first things that should be done? Where should they focus? This is something I always say because, in my opinion, I sometimes think that we lost some enthusiasm and desire to do things well, so competence and professionalism. All the people who work here have specific competencies to develop quality actions, and over 20 years we had several steps, and they were all important. Then money will come, in a way. And I think also in the next European planning, resources will be there. But we must plan very carefully. And the planning must be made by people that have some skills. And then you need enthusiasm, and you must be willing to learn. But I think you are. Thank you very much indeed. Let me leave the floor now to the round table that we're going to have now, which involves some of the most well-known routes. And they also cross Piedmont. How lucky we are. So let me thank Barbara Toce for chairing the round table. So thank you very much. Emanuela Panche, Leonora Berti, Renata Santoro, and Raffaella Caria. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank Edoardo and all the network of Piemonte's Historic Cafés for inviting me to this very interesting event in this very beautiful city I studied in, so I'm back home in a way. I used to be a mayor, and as a mayor, over 12 years, I took part in the Italian delegation in Strasbourg, in the Council of Europe, and I was a vice president for 7 years. And I had the chance to get to know the project of cultural roots. In 2015, I was invited in Lucca at the forum that was organized for the 30th anniversary of Roots. And then I met Stefano Dominioni and many of these roots. So a passion sparked that is still here today. I didn't know about this program, and so it actually opened up before me. And after this experience, my mission was to disseminate these roots to other territories, to other authorities, to other municipalities, because, as we said this morning, this program is little known. So we know about the UNESCO sites, we know about ways and routes, so often there is a little bit of confusion. You cannot actually tell a route from a way. Someone says, yeah, I know about it because I heard about it, but actually that's totally different things. So it is a very important project, as Roberta was saying, because it stems from the knowledge and awareness that the 47 members of the Council of Europe actually work within, well, let's say, with special common values that are reflected by these roots. Here with me, I have some representatives of the roots, and I would like to share with them, as the mayor said this morning, that it is important to involve the world of politics, local authorities at a regional and local level, and unfortunately they are not here now, because, as we said, the most important thing is knowledge. Knowledge is the fundamental element to understand the actual importance, to get passionate and to start working on these topics. So cultural routes are not all that easy. The Via Francigena and Santiago de Compostela are easier because they are linear, if you want. So there might be different routes, but actually you start from Canterbury, you reach Rome, and then you go down further. So you can take a road, take another road, but the way is always the same. You actually have other routes that are not linear, like the route of Historic Cafés is not linear at all. So you need to refer to values that need to be communicated because they create networks. So I would like to make a first question. So how can this network cooperate together? How do they cooperate together? And how could they, through the involvement of local authorities, associations and institutions, so how could they cooperate in synergy altogether? Shall I start? Yes, thank you. I am Emanuela Panche from INTANGIBLE. We are the network par excellence because we have 24 members and we cover and meet all the types of problems and very variegated way. The Council of Europe represents a larger area than the European communities, so from Azerbaijan to Portugal, but also the south side of the Mediterranean that has recently, Lebanon, for instance. So working in network is fundamental for us, and also working with the special attention of micro areas needs, because in some areas the actual needs, wishes and expectations are different, maybe from France, Italy or Spain. So these routes are an important tool. We come from Europe, I mean old Europe, so we take for granted the value of having a window overlooking the rest of the continent. We share an identity, yes, we do. And some countries don't have the strength, as they do not belong to the European Union. They cannot have this identity. So this could be a tool for being more open. So working in a network is fundamental, as together with our roots, to offer different opportunities. I think that Edoardo, even if he's new, he seized actually through this event the opportunity to work together to offer products, because we start our work as a cultural product and that becomes a tourist product. But we have coffee, wine and everything. This is not a reason for traveling itself. So we are here to understand how we can work together to offer more things, starting from the same product, cultural heritage, the different things. So offering a multi-target product and varied product that meets the expectations of different people, different ages and different types of people. So working in a network and intertwining our networks so as to multiply offers. Routes maybe are less known than the UNESCO sites, but they offer much more opportunities compared to the UNESCO sites, which is a little bit for the sake of itself. I am Raffaella Caria. Good evening, everyone, from European Historic Thermal Towns Association. Every time I say Historic Thermal Towns Association, well, that's very easy. It's very easy to promote this kind of towns. Actually, it's not, because these towns are thermal towns that have not always been fortunate over the years. The first time I went to Vichy, everybody thinks about Vichy as a major town. Actually, it is in the middle of nowhere in France, where the thermal business is actually, I would say, ancient. And then you discover that what you need to do is to put together all the different realities that are actually quite different, because this sector is not just a healthcare practice. It is something that in the past created the modern tourism. In 1841, when the middle class started to move around, to travel, to discover the world, well, there's loisir travels in Europe were actually based on the thermal destinations, and this is something that is still lived today. Can you hear me with this mic? It works a little better, yes. So when talking about modern tourism and thermal towns, you realize that they were very modern in the past, they are not so modern today. So everything should be revised, and those living in a thermal town should live in a cultural way. So if you only go to the thermal sites, of course, well, it's a little bit, you can do much more things, cultural activities, and you need to understand that a thermal town, for instance, the first association of thermal towns with 11 towns allowed this to be recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage. So we built a network first and a certification later. We are an exception in a way, thanks to the work that was done by a less known cultural network that was the actual basis of this work that was put into practice and that reached the summit in 2021. I would like to add something about referring to what Emanuela was saying. The linear routes are much easier to promote in theory. Thematic routes are more charming some way because they cover very different things. Maybe you have a number of members in 18 states, and of course you can imagine that a thermal site in Turkey is much different than a thermal site in Italy. So we should think that what we are doing is actually putting together culture from different religions, different cultures, but we share the same value of knowledge.
Buon pomeriggio.
Hello, good evening. I am Eleonora Berti, and I am the director of one of the cultural routes, Destination Napoléon. After 11 years, I worked in Luxembourg for the Institute of Cultural Routes of the Council of Europe. So when we were analyzing routes to certifying them, we kept saying you should make the territory more dynamic, you should cooperate together to focus on your territory, to promote your territory. And now I'm on the other side and I realize that this is not always that easy. We talk about linear networks, linear routes, networks. Well, I studied architecture and I studied the policies of the territory in the Via Francigena in Tuscany. As you can hear from my accent, I am from Florence. And the actual evolution of the program, as Mrs. Alberottanza presented, and each and every route developed a lot over the last 20 years. I am not that young, I must admit. I have worked on these topics for 20 years already. As for how should we work? Well, routes are projects, are network projects themselves. So we know that without network, there is no route. Not a theoretical network, but a practical one. It means that we have everyone works in an association, a federation, a group of people where different bodies, local bodies, private bodies, universities, research centers, they work together in synergy on the same topic. And tourism becomes the knowledge, the tool of knowledge to enhance the territory. And we hope tourists will notice and will be pushed to visit these destinations. To refer to what Roberta was saying at the beginning, we talk about history. Destination Napoléon, of course, I knew about it from the outside because I remember when we received a visit from Charles Napoleon to talk about these things, and we always say that Napoleon was a bit a contradiction and controversial, person, because sometimes we talk about the history of Spain and the invasions in Spain. It is quite difficult to define a Napoleonic route if we think that it is pro-Napoleon, because in some other areas we have quite the opposite. So it's difficult to have an homogeneous approach. And all these aspects should be taken into account. We have a theory and then we have the practice. Atrium as well, this is very controversial. We had so many difficulties. Yes, atrium for the route of architecture. In the 20th century, I remember that I participated in a meeting with Michel Thomas-Benetti in Bulgaria and Romania, and I remember that upon us said, well, here we have a sort of heritage of our totalitarianism, and we would like to actually destroy it totally, and we are here to protect it as a memory heritage. So again, there is a page of history that we lived together. It is part of our European memory and identity. Also, let's say, the darkest pages of our history. And Destination Napoléon, just to go back to the route I am represented, is a federation of cities and territories that is not like Caetaritis. We cover 11 countries of the Council of Europe, Montenegro, Portugal, and also the UK, that belongs to the Council of Europe and not to the European Union. And we have Plymouth in the UK, for instance, which is one of the places where he was kept in Bellerofonte before moving to St. Helena Island. So the idea of Napoleon touching upon different locations is actually something that, when we talk about Turin, for instance, this square where we are now, it used to be called Place Napoleon. And Napoleon used to love to have a coffee here. And he loved coffee, had 7 coffee machines that he always brought with him. For instance, during the campaign in Egypt, he brought his coffee machine. In Paris, he used to attend the Café de Chartres, that was very well known and that changed its name into Le Vie de Four. And he had fricassee and some other special dishes. So again, in this case, you can see that you have different things intertwining. And sometimes it's nice because you can discover things that are not taught in schools. So just to tell you something more, in Piedmont, you already know, in Piedmont, the Gianduja chocolate Gianduja was invented thanks to Napoleon because the supply was cut of all the products coming from abroad, so no cocoa, and we had to use other things to made up. For instance, that was the case of Gianduiotto chocolate. And also the beetroot sugar that was produced, that was extracted because it was the only way to get sugar. So again, this has become a part of our way of living, of our food culture, wine as well. So this leads to natural cooperations, and the local authorities should be a little bit more attentive in seizing these opportunities of development. Just one more little thing. Every federation, every route, as a route and as a city, as a destination. For instance, Paris has a very strong and long cultural and tourist tradition. We go to the Invalides not because they belong to the network, but because they are very famous. But we also have other sites that are a destination that is very well known, but there is also this side of tourism that is based on the topics that the different routes deal with. What should I say? I am Renata Santoro from the significant cemeteries in Europe that, was funded by Napoleon in a way. So we exist thanks to Napoleon. Napoleon chose to create us because it was much better, much healthier to have cemeteries outside the city walls. Turin was a bit special because starting in 1770, Turin decided to have cemeteries outside the walls, outside the place people lived in. So it was thanks to Napoleon anyway. First thing, I represent this route. The presidency is in Slovenia. The vice presidency is in Bologna. The monumental cemetery of Turin is one of the Italian places of this route of European cemetery that covers 21 countries. So Italy itself is a sub-route, if you want, because we have a group a very exposed group, the Italian Monumental Cemetery, and significant cemeteries. There is a special one that is a Napoleonic cemetery near Ivrea here in Piedmont. So for sure, we can be sure that Italian cemeteries are not very well promoted, and they struggle with that because in Italy, you know, cemeteries, no, I'm not going to visit a cemetery. But as you can imagine, cemeteries are places where we have at least 200 years of history of the city. We have the opportunity to see what happened in the north of Italy, in the south of Italy, how still today we have totally different traditions in a country or in another country. In Europe, we have so different traditions for burials, you can imagine. And we have a collection of works of art, splendid works of art. We were certified in 2010. We made different steps forward. We also have a new certification. I never remember how it is called. I was in Lucca, actually. I was the porte-parole for Slovenia, the spokesperson for Slovenia, for the presidency. And I must say that when the Historic Cafés contacted me, thanks to Professor Beltramo, as we cooperate together, we have cooperated together for a long time. We try and cooperate with local authorities, local bodies, to promote something that is quite similar, quite close to culture, school, the institutional interest in universities, for instance, the interest in studying more in depth of these topics, because, you know, Italian families usually struggle with these topics. So creating a network and working in a network, as we have always done, is fundamental. So when I was in Lucca, actually, we carried out, well, we had a first round of discussion. This is something that we always do as a European Association of Cemeteries, because we are part of the ASHA Association, European Significant Cemeteries in Europe. So it is a bit easier for us. We already have an association, and the route that was prepared, and an Italian group that belongs to Italia Save It. So yes, that's true. The association is useful because this allows to get help, because we learn more from other people's mistakes, and maybe the experience of a specific city. For instance, I know that Bologna, the Certosa of Bologna, is absolutely a point of reference for us as a promoter of activities. Bologna was able to cooperate with the municipality, with the local authorities, for the different routes and the arcades of the city. So they became a reference for us. And somebody said, well, we have arcades too. Yes, we know. And we will do our best for this route. Our activity is already linked with religious routes, because, of course, we carry out activities with the religious authorities and bodies. We cooperate with the Jewish community here in Turin, and for sure we have a lot more to do. And Our proposal was to create a way inside the cemetery. I will be accompanying people, not a professional guide, but I will tell you about some things about an hour visit. You will find a little flyer on your chair to remind you of the meeting place and time. And if you're for participants will receive one of these publications that were actually published by the City of Turin and the Historic Archive of the City of Turin. It also contains beautiful pictures of burial monuments. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for your attention, and I ask you to do what they did. So, organizing a meeting to talk together, to discuss, and to find a way to be a network. Thank you.
And now let me take this chance, as Eduardo is not taking the microphone away from me. This morning it was said, and it was repeated before, also by the Francigena Way, and it was also reported today, the network. This morning, Mrs. Beltramo said that staying in the route and keeping, having the criteria to be certified implies a whole set of preconditions. And the difficulty is not really being certified, but keeping the criteria and carry on. That is not easy, as often associations are made of people who work in a generous manner for free, and they are not all well organized as the Via Francigena, because those 20 people are paid, are remunerated for it, but they made previous work that was very important. They worked very hard, and that should set an example. I was also involved in the board of many routes. The network is really crucial, also in order to create synergies, as European planning. You know that European planning also implies some networks. You can't get there on your own. I participated, thanks to the Venetian route, to a project that was called Fab Route. 6 routes were involved. One of them was the Jewish heritage, working together with others. And in some ways, that situation could also be quite peculiar, but it actually worked fine, and beautiful things came out of it. So European planning is very, very important. On the one hand, to provide services to local entities, so they understand how important it is to be a part of route, and on the other hand, to find stable resources to be able to create associations with the staff that can work in them. I am sorry that this afternoon there's no representatives from the chambers of commerce, because those associations are also very important. We should involve them, and they can be active. They have resources that can be provided to the territory. But as we said before, we also need regional policies and national policies to understand how important these routes are. Contrary to France, where the government provides some resources, we are not acknowledged by our state. They pay 40,000 euros per year for the partial agreement, but then they forget about it. So what happens? Beautiful synergies are happening, and here we also have young people who are doing something very important. They are involving some routes, because Politicians should do that. But it is important to work together, and so I also accept Roberta's call. We should have our voice heard, but speak as one to all the routes, that so that they can make them understand how important all this is. It's not just nice words said at a conference, just to tell you, you're beautiful, you're great, we believe in you. This should be an active will to place resources in them. Without resources, it will be more and more difficult, and free work becomes tiring in a way. We should find retired people, or otherwise it will be more and more difficult. And this should start as the Café route, which is quite important to enhance the heritage. I think this should be the occasion to start and send important signals in this direction. If I may, I just would like to add a word. Our Historical Cafés Route, to the contrary of most of them, is somewhat peculiar. Nowadays, the members are all private members. Recently, the Lavazza Museum entered. It is still private, but it's not a business. But all the others are private businesses. As we said, these are third places. They are private places with a public interest for the community, but these are companies, bars. So this is an added difficulty, because each member of the route has their everyday activities. They have to follow their bar, but also they lack resources and funding. So this is something that we should repeat and speak of with the Chamber of Commerce and other institutions. One idea that might be checked is to have towns that have a historical cafe in their territory participate, as we did this morning in the Memorandum of Understanding that was signed. So if the route allows towns to participate, well, then maybe each town with a proportionality that can be identified can maybe lend a hand and help with the idea that, as we saw the impact of the Via Francigena, we would also be happy with less. But maybe we could consider that, and that might have an impact. And that is also the topic of this afternoon, the crossing, the interweaving of routes. You all said something that is very correct, that it is very important to network. Today, we are trying to go beyond, so to network with several entities, several routes crossing a same regional area. In our case, it is Piedmont. So I think we should assess that. We could maybe get funding at the regional level, but with a coordination that is not so easy to identify, but it is even more important and stimulating. I think this model, this pattern, might be a reference for other regions in Italy or other regions in Europe. I guess Emanuele and Eleonora wanted to add something. I would like to say something in defense of municipalities, as I was a mayor before. What's the problem? If a town is crossed by more than one route, sometimes the municipality does not have the financial ability or staff ability to follow these things. We know that municipalities are the last ring of a chain that is quite complicated. They have a whole list of difficulties. So when citizens say, I don't pay the bill, but they pay the fee for a cultural route, then you have to balance those situations. This is why I said that I think an upper level would be important at regional or national level, so you can maybe have a different setup. As Roberta said, Italy is crossed by many routes. At lunch, we spoke with the manager of tourism in Turin, and when a city is crossed by 7 itineraries and you have to pay the fee for 7 routes, well, that might be complicated. This is why I say that in these cases, the regional council should have a strategic view of the cultural growth of where they want to go and what they want to enhance. The same Visit Piedmont that was here this morning. That would be very important on behalf of the institutions, a strategy, and it is sometimes lacking. We said that sometimes we have overlapping institutions on several topics. The councillors work without knowing that many people work. So that should be prevented, actually. Just a couple of things on our role. Going back to what Eduardo said, what is crucial is that you only have private members. We are the wine route, not of wine, because we were founded in 2007. When we presented the proposal in 2008, they said, oh, commercial wine, that's horrible. And as Roberta mentioned, the history, I think that is also important. In the beginning, there was the idea that culture was something very limited. So when we mentioned viticulture, that was a scandal, especially the French people said that could not be certified. So it was very hard for us to prove that the history of viticulture and of wine growing was something that linked the whole continent. And the fact that you are now acknowledged and all private members are in the route, that's really crucial, because the program is also becoming more modern. Even the tourist product was not admitted, and now we are encouraged to work on tourism, but at the time we could only work on some very limited topics. There was this push attitude, and they didn't understand how useful certify other topics could be, and also enhance the commercial part. You know, commerce is not that bad if you see it under the right light. So we enhance private businesses that invested their money to protect a common heritage. Actually, the heritage of cafes is something common, a common good for community. And I think it also requires a lot of energy and financial investments. So that's a big change in the program. And concerning the pressure for tourist products, we have a huge opportunity. We can create tourist products that get out of the flows that now in some cities do not allow sustainable tourists. And that does not only happen in the countryside. You don't have to go to isolated places. In Turin, in Rome, or in other cities that are filled with tourists, we can create alternative routes thanks to cultural routes, so they can maybe let them breathe and enjoy the city differently. I have already been in Rome several times, but I can go there and follow a different route and see something different. So that is a huge opportunity for us. One last thing, we mentioned the funding, the results that we have to obtain and what we need. But I still have a more romantic view. And I think our result is also a political one. We have some tools in our hands that are incredible, and we can get to cultural diplomacy results that can't be obtained otherwise. I have Azerbaijan and Armenia in the same route, and at the contest there was a judge from Lebanon or Israel. In other situations they could not even be in the same room, and that is the value of cultural routes. That is why I am still so emotional about it 70 years later. We should not forget about that when we are faced with difficulties, when we have to pay for our staff or when we have to travel. That is something that you can't have in any other program, and it is very satisfactory. I wanted to go back to the topic of strategic planning allowed by the routes, and that is also connected to the fees. Barbara reminded us that sometimes municipalities must make decisions, because if there is a prize for routes, they should choose the one that is more popular and that brings more people. But the aim is to go beyond the fees. Like the dream, maybe not a too romantic one, but as I work in urban planning and as a landscapist, my dream is that local administrations at several governance levels use routes as strategies. So we should enter in the ordinary strategies of institutions at several levels. So if a small or big municipality, let's mention Turin, understands the potential of a route, and they understand that instead of inventing 1,000 routes to diversify tourism, just makes use of us, because we are ready for use and we are willing to cooperate, well, then it's not a question of fees, because we can get fees through the participation in common projects. We can get them from other sources. They should just enact a virtuous cycle of cooperation and networks at several levels in order to co-plan at local and European level, as co-planning in Europe can finance local co-planning with several funds that clever administrators know very well. So the big advantage is the network. A network certified by a value organism, as the Council of Europe gives no funding but gives certifications, and even though they are not institutionally recognized by the European Commission in their calls for interest, we are acknowledged. So even if we are not given priority, well, the European Union knows our programs very well, and they know that the money invested in the route are given for projects that will most probably be sustainable, because the network existed before the European planning. Someone said, I have a dream. I also have a dream. I believe, and I don't want to copy UNESCO, but I think we should design and conceive an Italian association of cultural routes. We are turning into a body with a personality of its own. It doesn't matter. They can copy myself, but it doesn't matter to me. We do have to start being a network at national level, join and cooperate more and more, and maybe the idea of an association is useful. My name is Davide Rosso. I am the representative of the Huguenot and Valdese routes. Here I am as a local Valdesian, but anyway, I was thinking, when I listened to your words, and of course this last thing would be nice to do. We have to try a network, but when I heard the first round of interventions, I was thinking that it would be good to have a bureau, an association, It doesn't matter. We are here gathered around an ideal table where we are sharing information. Napoleon, for the Valdesians, was freedom. For people from Turin, he was someone who drank too much coffee and a bad person. It wasn't the same for the Valdesian people. So the cemeteries, seen from another perspective, and you can do the same from your perspective. Graveyards for Valdesians would mean exclusion. This would be a different field. This was something different. You were the other. Now, the vines and vineyards, well, they are doing quite well, as thanks to the Huguenots' expulsion from France, vineyards started in California or South Africa. So they were exporters of knowledge as well as plants. And I say this because the Petit Grand Tour was made by European Protestants in the Valdesian valleys, as they were very much linked with Switzerland. They also brought chocolate. This is not because I want to show that I know the Valdesian history, but you could tell me the same. Like, if we have a place where to meet, we can exchange information, create a knowledge network of our own, and then we can be very strong, because we can sell, in inverted commas, what you are as a movement, as a network. I gave a speech in the Aosta Valley where I said that one should not speak of ways, but we are a movement, or we should become one. If we become a movement in the imagery, we can grow. Thank you very much. Let me connect. I'm a minority here, as he is, as I deal with Jewish roots, and I have done that for many years. I believe we have a very strong link between us, much stronger than you think. For us, Napoleon opened the ghettos. After many more things happened, but graveyards exist. They have always been separated. They have different stories. But there is a Caffè wine. It also has a story of its own. But it's very widespread, despite great difficulties, as you know. So I think it is very important to speak to each other, as we have a great possibility to give one another some ideas and cooperate in small or big things, and be known. So cooperation is very important, and I agree with you. We have known each other for such a long time, and we have spoken of this for a too long time, I believe. Then it's a high time we did it. If we have been speaking of it for a long time, and if we all agree, we should just do it. And this is exactly the spirit that pushed my colleagues and myself to organize this day and to invite roots here around this table. This is our goal. Maybe our target could be a national coordination. We start from There's small 15 regional routes, but we can actually be very useful for each other. And going back to what you said before concerning the funding, well, then it would be easier to ask for money from the region, because it is not the town that should choose one route or the other if many cross the town. Maybe if there is a central coordination with some staff, well, that could be a target, and I'm very happy. I was listening to your interventions and I found everything very interesting. Anyway, as a conclusion, to wrap up, I think there's a new force, a new momentum concerning cultural routes. In the past, we even were afraid that the program would close. There was a stalemate moment, but it recovered. There are 13 routes tried to be certified. Only one could be certified in the end, the transhumance, but there's a lot of interest, and we have to exploit that. But I agree that we have to share our experiences and the fact of creating in Italy, as other countries do, something. And we can assess what can come out of it is very important. To lobby from a political point of view and also to be known. And then everybody is astonished. Today, the councillor from Biella was going through the book about cultural roots, and he said, well, I have that, I could participate, but there's little knowledge of it. So we also have this task. Make ourselves known also through the work of universities, museums, and local administrators, and the work of everybody. So, starting from today, we set the first stone to create new ideas. As they say in volleyball, we launch the ball, and we will try to make the best use of it. Thank you very much. Now, to stick to the same topic, as I did this morning with the institutions, I would like to thank officially for their cooperation and trust the routes from Piemonte that signed the Memorandum of Understanding. We do not have all the signatures yet, so we can't declare it closed, but we have 10 out of 14, and the rest said that you are going to send it, so we can consider it done. Let me just read a couple of lines. The representatives of certified cultural routes that cross the region of Piedmont commit to undersign a Memorandum of Understanding to act as a team for cultural routes in Piedmont and work together in a network of promotion and mutual knowledge in order to protect, enhance, and spread the cultural heritage of cultural European routes that cross Piedmont by offering citizens the possibility to make use of this huge common heritage. This is the short but pregnant text that we ask them to sign. Only a few are left, so we can consider it signed. And after what we heard today, I think this is a very good starting point for a common table, at regional level at least, to start, and then who knows. So thank you again to all the people who are there and to all the people who signed and those who helped me write it. Very well, Vitor.
And now, Vitor Marquez is going to hold his intervention in English. We have organized our translation, so now we have the interpreters with us in another room, and we'll do vice versa. So Vitor is going to talk in English, and we are going to translate into Italian. So you will hear the interpreters' voices.
Thank you once again.
Grazie ancora. Mi dispiace, mi siederò perché leggerò il mio discorso in inglese. E se aveste domande potrete pormele dopo il discorso. Se volete, chiaramente. Parlerò dell'Associazione Portoghese dei Caffè Storici e anche dell'itinerario. Innanzitutto vorrei salutare tutte le autorità nazionali e locali presenti a questa conferenza. In secondo luogo vorrei ringraziare l'Associazione dei Caffè Storici di Torino e del Piemonte per avermi invitato qui oggi. Questo intervento sarà diviso in due momenti, il primo dedicato all'Associazione Portoghese dei Caffè Storici e il secondo all'itinerario dei caffè storici. Nel 2012 l'Associazione Portoghese dei Caffè Storici iniziò la ricerca e l'inventario dei caffè storici esistenti in Portogallo. Il progetto dell'itinerario dei caffè storici del Portogallo è stato presentato nel 2014 e ha fatto parte del programma della 16ª settimana culturale dell'Università di Coimbra. Nello stesso giorno è stato presentato un opuscolo con l'elenco dei 23 caffè storici del Portogallo. Tra il 2012 e il 2014, periodo in cui è stato realizzato questo primo elenco dei caffè storici del Portogallo, l'intero progetto è stato finanziato da me. L'inventario, le visite ai caffè, quindi il viaggio ai soggiorni, il fotografo, il designer e anche i testi. Solo nel 2016 ho potuto finalmente pubblicare il libro Itinerario dei caffè storici portoghesi, una versione migliorata dell'opuscolo presentato nel 2014. Questo libro è stato pensato per funzionare un po' come un passaporto in cui ognuno avrebbe potuto scrivere i propri ricordi e le proprie sensazioni. Ho ricevuto finanziamenti da 2 enti privati e 2 enti pubblici con 2 edizioni, una in portoghese e l'altra in inglese. Quindi in questo periodo ho stabilito una partnership con le poste nazionali che ha permesso alla fine del 2016 di pubblicare un'edizione di francobolli dedicati proprio ai caffè storici. Alla fine del 2017 è stato pubblicato il libro Il caffè del Portogallo, tradizioni e incontri, che comprende 39 caffè storici del Portogallo, tra cui caffè storici delle isole Azzorre e di Madeira. Alcuni di questi caffè sono il risultato della mia ricerca personale con successiva visita tra il 2015 e il 2016. Nel 2018 si è tenuto l'incontro internazionale dei caffè storici con il tema I caffè storici come patrimonio culturale. Questa iniziativa è stata inserita nella programmazione della 20ª settimana culturale dell'Università di Coimbra e nella programmazione dell'anno europeo del patrimonio culturale. Ho avuto anche il sostegno della strada dei caffè storici, che all'epoca si chiamava EICA. Nel 2020 è stato pubblicato il libro I caffè storici come patrimonio culturale, l'incontro, che contiene tutti i contributi dei partecipanti al seminario. Nel 2020 l'Associazione portoghese dei caffè storici ha vinto il primo premio nella categoria prodotti turistici tematici transnazionali con il progetto Caffè storici nella penisola iberica. Questo premio è promosso dalla rete europea del turismo culturale e gode del sostegno della Commissione europea dei viaggi e di Europa Nostra. La candidatura per questo premio è stata fatta in collaborazione col mio amico Ferdinando Franjo, un giornalista spagnolo e autore del libro 5 caffè storici di Spagna e Portogallo. L'attribuzione di questo primo premio ci ha permesso di partecipare all'edizione del 21, The Best in Heritage, in partenariato con il Consiglio internazionale dei musei e Europa Nostra con il sostegno di Creative Europe. A seguito di questa collaborazione con Fernando Frange, che abbiamo pensato a un progetto che abbiamo chiamato Café do Caminho. Questo progetto è stato concepito all'inizio del 2021, quando stavamo entrando nel secondo lockdown del Covid-19. Café do Caminho presenta un prodotto senza precedenti che consiste nel trasformare i caffè storici di Coimbra, Porto, Braga, Vigo, Pontevedra e Santiago in tappe di un pellegrinaggio turistico-culturale nelle città che costituiscono le tappe del Cammino di Santiago, tra Coimbra e Santiago de Compostela. Questo pellegrinaggio artistico, che include musica, danza, magia, pittura, mostre, gastronomia, rafforzerebbe l'identità interculturale e transfrontaliera tra il Portogallo e la Spagna. Nell'anno 2021 è stato molto complicato a causa di nuovo del Covid-19 in termini economici e finanziari e quindi non siamo riusciti a ottenere finanziamenti per la realizzazione. Continuiamo a credere tuttavia che il progetto Café do Caminho possa rafforzare il portafoglio di prodotti culturali e turistici nazionali e quindi contribuire alla crescita sostenuta del settore. Nel 2022 è stato organizzato il seminario Caffè Storici, un incontro di idee, un'iniziativa realizzata in collaborazione con l'itinerario dei caffè storici e Caffè Santa Cruz. Questo è stato il primo evento del programma per le celebrazioni del centenario. Molti temi sono stati discussi: i caffè storici, l'importanza di un itinerario culturale europeo, il patrimonio culturale e i caffè storici, itinerari culturali e del patrimonio. I più importanti obiettivi erano la partecipazione di istituzioni ed enti europei associati con gli itinerari culturali europei, riflettere sull'importanza della creazione di una giornata nazionale dei caffè storici, proporre la creazione di una giornata europea dei caffè storici, la creazione di un passaporto per chi visita i caffè storici in Portogallo e in Europa, riflettere sull'importanza e la salvaguardia dei caffè per la memoria di persone e luoghi, identità locali e autenticità. E infine contribuire alla certificazione dei caffè storici come itinerario culturale del Consiglio d'Europa. In entrambi gli incontri abbiamo avuto eventi paralleli, mostre, pittura dal vivo e musica dal vivo, degustazione di dolci regionali e anche di caffè. Lungo questo percorso ho partecipato a vari seminari, conferenze in diverse città europee e i temi di cui abbiamo parlato erano il contributo dei caffè storici al turismo e alla gastronomia, i caffè dei viaggiatori, i caffè storici nelle città che sono patrimonio mondiale dell'UNESCO. Dal 2018 partecipo annualmente al Comitato Consultivo Annuale degli Itinerari Culturali del Consiglio d'Europa. E ora dirò qualcosa che non è scritta. Il finanziamento di tutte queste attività provenivano da varie istituzioni private e vari enti pubblici governativi. Ed è importante dire che il denaro che ho ricevuto era solo per organizzare quello che ho menzionato. Il presidente dell'Associazione portoghese e il finanziatore dell'attività, lo sponsor. Grazie. Quindi gli obiettivi dell'Associazione portoghese dei caffè storici per il prossimo futuro, e di nuovo non è scritto, la creazione della giornata nazionale, ma anche qualcosa che ho visto ieri, che avviene a Coimbra in Portogallo e qui a Torino, ovvero i caffè storici non sono nelle guide locali o quelle nazionali, quindi è un lavoro che dobbiamo svolgere, perché è un peccato che i caffè storici torinesi non siano riportate nelle guide locali. Succede la stessa cosa in Portogallo. È qualcosa su cui dobbiamo lavorare per il futuro. E qualcosa che vorrei fare, ed è stato un suggerimento di Edoardo. Al momento stiamo parlando con il Ministero della Cultura perché credo che almeno in Portogallo ci sia una mancanza di informazioni sugli itinerari culturali. Quindi ho proposto al Ministero della Cultura di organizzare delle piccole formazioni a livello locale, portoghese, in modo da poter parlare delle nostre problematiche, obiettivi e anche le maniere per raggiungere i nostri obiettivi, in particolare per quanto riguarda il finanziamento. In Portogallo abbiamo solo 15 itinerari, più o meno quello che avete qui in Piemonte, quindi sarà un po' più difficile, ma comunque mi aspetto che il Ministero della Cultura ci aiuti in questo senso. Ho anche proposto di avere una maniera per poter aiutare le altre itinerari, per insegnare come per esempio ottenere finanziamenti appunto per le attività, finanziare le proprie attività. Ho proposto anche un altro punto che ho visto qui in Italia e in Francia e che potrebbe esistere in Portogallo. Una mostra sulle itinerari culturali, così come avviene in Italia e anche in Francia, viene fatto molto bene. E l'anno scorso, o 2 anni fa, in Francia è stata pubblicata una brochure con tutti gli itinerari, 31 itinerari che passano per la Francia, appunto. Ho scritto altre cose sull'Associazione Portoghese dei Caffè Storici, ma credo che al momento per noi questa sia la cosa più importante. Quindi parlando appunto dell'itinerario dei caffè storici. Il Consiglio d'Europa ha certificato questo itinerario nel giugno 2021. Con questa certificazione l'itinerario culturale europeo dei caffè storici metterà in pratica i valori del Consiglio d'Europa. Gli itinerari culturali del Consiglio d'Europa sono un invito unico a viaggiare e a scoprire un ricco e variegato patrimonio europeo. Mettono in pratica i valori del Consiglio d'Europa, unendo persone e luoghi in reti transnazionali di storie e patrimoni comuni. L'itinerario dei caffè storici conta attualmente 99 membri e amici dei caffè storici provenienti da 15 paesi. Potete trovare altre informazioni e dettagli sul sito ufficiale dell'itinerario. Potete anche trovare i profili dei nostri membri, le collaborazioni, la partecipazione e gli eventi. Quindi potete visitare il nostro sito che verrà aggiornato molto presto con alcuni dettagli che includono sia i membri dell'itinerario dei caffè storici e quelli dell'EICA. Attualmente stiamo rafforzando i nostri contatti con i caffè storici in Turchia, Francia, Austria, Libano, Germania, Albania e Regno Unito. Questo significa che l'itinerario dei caffè storici cresce e si espande per ottenere più membri e quindi maggiore visibilità. Il nostro obiettivo è anche quello di aumentare il numero di accordi di collaborazione con altri itinerari culturali. Uno degli obiettivi dell'itinerario dei caffè storici è quello di articolare e promuovere partenariati con altri itinerari culturali europei. Abbiamo attualmente siglato 4 accordi con altri percorsi certificati, cioè l'Itervitis, la Rotta dei Fenici, la Via Europea della Fiaba e l'itinerario delle donne scrittrici, per rafforzare la collaborazione e la promozione di valori comuni, esperienze condivise, promuovere circuiti culturali e turistici, valorizzare il patrimonio comune materiale e immateriale secondo i valori europei. Nel settore dei caffè storici possiamo considerare che esiste un'offerta differenziata di prodotti diversi rivolti a segmenti turistici più esigenti che possono essere classificati in turismo letterario, architettonico e gastronomico. Questi segmenti turistici fanno parte del crescente turismo culturale. I caffè storici possono rafforzare il portafoglio di prodotti turistici nazionali e in questo modo contribuire alla crescita sostenuta di questo settore. Devo menzionare un altro obiettivo che tutti gli itinerari culturali devono raggiungere. Il Consiglio d'Europa ha adottato l'Agenda 2030 delle Nazioni Unite per lo sviluppo sostenibile. La sostenibilità è uno dei 3 argomenti principali dell'Accademia di formazione degli itinerari culturali. Questi argomenti vedono anche il contributo dell'itinerario dei caffè storici, non solo come patrimonio materiale e immateriale, ma anche per l'aspetto economico, politico, culturale, sociale ed ecologico. I caffè storici hanno il segno dell'eccellenza dato dalla certificazione come itinerario culturale del Consiglio d'Europa. L'itinerario dei caffè storici è riuscito a creare un profilo molto forte e importante attraverso il sito web ufficiale, ma anche i social media ufficiali come Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram e Twitter. Poiché tutte le azioni dell'itinerario dei caffè storici sono promosse attraverso il sito web e i social media, vi chiedo di partecipare e di svolgere un ruolo prezioso nella famiglia dell'itinerario dei caffè storici. In qualità di membro del Consiglio di amministrazione dell'itinerario dei caffè storici, posso dire che insieme al team esecutivo, Georges Laverdos, il responsabile dell'itinerario è Maria Mistakidou, responsabile della comunicazione, siamo sempre a vostra disposizione per qualsiasi necessità. È molto importante parlare insieme lungo questo percorso e creare partnership per il futuro. E insieme possiamo andare oltre. Valorizzeremo, faremo conoscere la nostra storia, riconosceremo e ricorderemo le nostre memorie, tradizioni e identità, preservando e curando questa eredità, questa conoscenza per le generazioni future. I caffè storici sono un tesoro che onorano la nostra storia, la nostra memoria, le nostre tradizioni e fanno parte della nostra eredità culturale che vogliamo proteggere per le generazioni future. Sono assolutamente convinto che i caffè storici siano un'esperienza autentica nel turismo culturale. Grazie.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Cristina.
Grazie a lei, thank you to you.
Sorry from the things I made you suffer, sorry.
No problem, that's fine.
Thank you. I don't know if you have any questions.
Non so se avete domande.
Even in Italian, if you want.
Se sono anche in italiano potete comunque farle.
You've been very clear.
It's been a very difficult way this last 10 years.
Sono stati difficili gli ultimi 10 anni, almeno per il Portogallo.
It's been a long work without no money.
È stato un lavoro lungo da fare senza soldi. Ma credo che il programma proposto al Ministero della Cultura sia stato accettato. E spero che nel 2026 possiamo avere il forum di consultazione sulle itinerari culturali in Portogallo. For the forum, it's that they are organized in very small cities and we have all the conditions for that. E non vedo l'ora che si svolga questo forum, spero che Coimbra possa accoglierlo, è una piccola città e quindi uno dei vantaggi del forum è appunto che si svolge in città piccole, penso che ci siano tutte le condizioni necessarie. But if we could manage to have the advisory forum, I would like to have a program between 2023 until 2026 to promote the cultural roots in Portugal because it's important. I think if we promote the historic roots, probably we will have more companies to finance our activities, to finance our projects. Because if someone is asking me money and if I don't know the project, for me it's difficult to finance and to support
that project. So it will be the next stage is to let the people and the companies to know about the cultural roots. One more thing. In Coimbra,
Se riusciremo a svolgere questo forum della consultazione in Portogallo, ci stiamo già proiettando verso il periodo 2023-2026 e credo che sarà importante lavorare per una promozione degli itinerari culturali in Portogallo e forse a questo punto ci saranno anche più imprese disposte a finanziare progetti, perché se una persona mi chiede dei soldi ma io non so nulla del progetto, ovviamente ho più resistenza a concedere dei fondi. Quindi secondo me adesso la prossima fase consisterà appunto nel rendere noto il nostro progetto a più persone e più aziende.
and I have a problem that in my city, Coimbra, in the center of Portugal, between Porto and Lisbon, it's a very nice city. You are invited to go there. Nobody speaks about the 6 cultural routes that passes by in this small city. It's 6 out of 15 that are in Portugal. So I think there is a long way, a long path that we need to, at least I need in Coimbra, to promote the cultural routes that passes by in my city.
E abbiamo un problema secondo me a Coimbra, che tra l'altro è una città molto carina e siete invitati tutti a visitarla, una città che è al centro del Portogallo, fra Lisbona e Porto. Il problema è che nessuno parla di questi 6 itinerari culturali che la attraversano. Passano da Coimbra 6 itinerari su 16 che abbiamo in Portogallo, ma la gente non li conosce. Quindi secondo me il lavoro che dobbiamo fare a livello di promozione è ancora molto lungo.
That's why this morning when I finished my presentation, I said, and I'm going to finish, okay, just like I finished the ceremony of the certificate, that it's my mission, I would say, and it's my dream, because I like the cultural roots very much to let them not be known by other people, because the work is done by several of you that are present, but the message doesn't reach other people. That's a long way that we need to work on that. Thank you. Sorry,
E quindi l'ho già detto stamattina, il motivo è che secondo me è la mia missione qui, e con questo poi concluderò, la mia missione è anche il mio sogno, perché io sono veramente appassionato di questi itinerari culturali e quindi quello che voglio è che più persone possibile conoscano questi itinerari culturali. È un lavoro che è stato fatto da tante persone anche presenti qui, ma il messaggio deve arrivare a sempre più persone.
Sorry, Edward told me that I have 2 more minutes, so if you have any other question or any question, you can ask me. I have 2 more minutes.
Quindi mi hanno detto che ho ancora 2 minuti a disposizione, perciò se avete delle domande ho ancora 2 minuti per rispondervi. Non è facile parlare così.
Thank you very much. Grazie mille. Testimonianza davvero importante perché ha fatto tutto da solo.
Wow, this witness was very important because he did all on his own in Portugal. So when we complain about Italy, just I think of him, and I think we are still quite lucky. We will close the day with a look towards the future, or what we hope that can be a cultural future going through Piedmont, with a short video. We are going to speak of a possible route linked to Vermouth. As we all know, it starts in Turin or in Piedmont, and then it was spread all over the world. Turin is considered the Italian capital of Vermouth, as Chambéry is the same in France, and Reus, a small town close to Barcelona in Catalonia, is the Spanish capital. These 3 towns are the minimum to candidate and to make a project start. They are working hard to make it happen, so maybe next time we meet we can tell you about a new route.
anche se in realtà Taora, perché parlavamo proprio del vermouth, è proprio
Although at lunch we were really speaking of vermouth, and sometimes it is hard to get certified due to several reasons. And Emanuela, who is the president of Intervitis, and they certified the Malvasia route. Well, we thought that anyway, this opportunity can be given in Intervitis too. So this is already a good opportunity, and vermouth, by entering Intervitis, can be already certified and so reach an important level. Very good, Lynn.
C'è già un risultato dell'incontro.
So we have a first result of the meeting. Beautiful. Just live.
Prendi percentuali in vermouth o in vino? No.
Yes, so you work as the project manager, and do you get paid in vermouth or wine?
Allora, regia di far partire il video di Laura
So we
Cattaneo
can start the
Capdevilla,
video
responsabile per la
by
promozione
Laura
del
Cattaneo Capdevilla,
comune di
who
Reus.
is responsible for the promotion in the municipality of Reus.
Buongiorno. Good morning. First of all, I would like to
Buongiorno,
thank
prima
the
di tutto vorrei
organization
ringraziare
of the Historic
l'organizzazione
Café
della
Route
conferenza
conferences for
sull'itinerario
inviting
dei
us here
caffè
today
storici,
to
per averci
participate
invitato qui
in
oggi
the conferences
a
and
partecipare alla
be able
conferenza
to
e
present
poter
our
presentare
project,
il
which is
nostro
the
progetto,
European route of
che è la
Vermouth,
via europea
which
del
is only
vermouth,
just
che
starting,
è solo
but
agli inizi, ma
it's a
è
great
una grande
opportunity for us to
opportunità per
start
noi
being able to let people know that we're working on
per
this
iniziare a farvi
future
sapere
project.
che stiamo lavorando a
So,
questo
thank you very
progetto
much.
futuro. Quindi vi ringrazio
Unfortunately, we can't
moltissimo.
be there physically, but
Purtroppo non possiamo essere lì
we send
fisicamente,
our best wishes for the
ma
whole
vi facciamo i
event,
nostri migliori auguri
and
per tutto
hopefully we'll
l'evento
be able to be there next
e
time.
speriamo di poter essere presenti lì la prossima
just
volta.
to explain a little bit of the
Per spiegare
European
un
route
po'
of
la
Vermouth,
via europea del vermouth,
Reus, which is where we
Reus,
come from, is
da cui
just
veniamo
a
noi,
small city about an hour
è
south of
una
Barcelona.
cittadina
But it has a
circa
very
a un'ora a
strong,
sud di Barcellona, ma ha una
tradition
tradizione
in the,
molto solida
production
nella
and consumption of
produzione e
vermouth.
nel consumo di vermouth.
And that's how the whole idea,
Ed è così che è nata
set off
l'idea di avviare
of,
tutto questo
starting this
progetto.
project. Basically, Reus,
Fondamentalmente Reus, tanto per tornare un po' indietro nella storia, per dare un po' di contesto, era una città molto importante nell'Ottocento, era la seconda città della Catalogna dopo Barcellona, aveva un'industria commerciale molto forte basata sul predecessore del vermouth, che era una specie di brandy, così tanto da stabilire il prezzo internazionale di questa bevanda insieme a Parigi e a Londra, e aveva anche la prima stazione enologica costruita in Spagna, che esiste ancora ed è ancora qui a Reus. Si trova in un edificio in stile Liberty che si può visitare. Tutta questa tradizione che abbiamo nel settore del vermouth ci ha spinto a lavorare su progetti per far conoscere ai visitatori e ai turisti questo legame fortissimo con questa bevanda. E per far conoscere loro non solo l'aspetto produttivo, perché alcuni dei marchi più noti in Spagna sono prodotti qui a Reus, ma anche perché c'è un legame molto forte con questa bevanda. Qui in Spagna c'è un'espressione: andiamo a prendere un vermouth, che è un po' come quando si dice andiamo a prendere un caffè. Quindi non è tanto l'idea di bere un...
It's the fact that people get together with the excuse to discuss life, politics, and everything and anything. And that is part of the tradition of the consumption of vermouth. So that's kind of the link between us and the Historic Cafés Route. And that's how the whole idea started off and how we began to work on the European route. We started building connections with Turin and Chambéry, which would be our partners in the project, because obviously Turin is the capital, world capital of vermouth, with Martini being very famous and with the over 40 brands that they have in being produced in Turin. But also they have products that are tourist products that are linked to vermouth, and they're working on that line of promotion for the city. So that was a very strong link, for the project. And then from there, it came about that Chambéry was twinned with Turin. The proximity of the three cities made it easy to begin to talk and to take actions. And Chambéry is also, although it has a very smaller production of vermouths compared to other cities in France, they are some of the most well-known in France, the brands that they have, and it's also they are the only brands that have a seal of quality. They are certified for the quality in the whole of France. So that made it interesting to join synergies and start working together in the project. The idea began back in 2019. Unfortunately, the pandemic stopped everything, all the different contacts that we were starting to build and the project. But we continued to build and develop the idea of what had to be included in this project and the different actions that had to be taken. And finally, last year, when things started to go back to normal, we were able to get together with both towns and finally sit down and propose and have a firm proposal of what the project could involve and how it should be developed and in how many years it could be developed. And the good thing was that the reception from both towns was very positive. And back in October, they got back to us confirming that their participation in the project and that both town halls were in favor of continuing with the project. So now we're starting to work on the different agreements, collaboration agreements that we need to sign, which is obviously not easy. That's the hard part because there's 3 different countries involved with different laws and requirements. So we need to establish the basis on how we're going to work and the role that each town is going to have. But it is a very exciting project, and we're all very excited about getting it started. It is also a very ambitious project, and it does have a large magnitude, budget wise. So it does depend on financial support, which is one of the things that we are working on now. We are looking for financial support from the European Union. And the next step would obviously be starting to take the first steps of actually doing some of the actions that we've included in the project to get it rolling, and hopefully also become one of the cultural routes of the Council of Europe. And then from then on, well, if it expands and more towns and cities want to join that have some sort of link to the tradition of the historical tradition of the vermouth, be it production and consumption, or be it the social side of it, which is obviously very important, then we're open to any other partners that want to join. So hopefully this will start soon, and we will start being able to see some actions take place. And we're welcome to have anyone from the Historic Cafés Route joining us, because there's that strong link of vermouth being consumed in cafes and having that social interaction, as we said, with other people and with the cafe Historic Cafés Route. So thank you very much once again, and hopefully next time we will be able to meet personally. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bene. Allora, finito, sono sempre io.
Here I am, still me.
Grazie a tutti.
Thank you.
La giornata
Thank you all.
si è conclusa appunto con questo slancio verso un
The day is done with this look towards a future route, and we from Turin really hope it will happen, because in historical cafes with vermouth we have many things in common and many things to tell you. I thank again all the people who came today, those who could not come but sent a video. those who helped us during these weeks and months, the technicians, Gallerie d'Italia. And now we have a private visit starting in a few minutes from Gallerie d'Italia. We will go to the Nobile floor and then we will go and see the exhibition, which is very, very beautiful indeed. Then we will have a 1 hour break, we can wash our face, and then we will meet at Baratti Milano. We will have the concert of the Conservatory at 8 p.m. A concert. I have this teleprompter. So let's start all over again. At 8 in the Gallery at the Baratti Milano Caffè, there will be a concert of approximately 20 minutes offered by the Conservatory of Turin, and then we will stop for a quick bite, and then, if weather allows, we will see if we can the mole that was lit the way that you can see in the picture. From Patrizio's place, yes, we should go to the Cappuccini's Mount, where it can be easily seen. That is the point from where this picture was taken, but it really depends on the weather. And then tomorrow morning there will be another bit of the program with a visit to the Lavazza Museum at 10 a.m., where we will meet the director and managers that were here today. They will show you around this beautiful immersive museum, which recently entered the Historic Cafés Route, which also includes not only cafes, but also entities that are connected to the cafe world. And of course, Lavazza is a great representative of it. Then at approximately 11:30, we will see the monumental cemetery of Turin. Thank you, Renata. And then, if you are a little bit hungry or thirsty, we can go back to the city center, go to historical cafes, and have a drink before saying goodbye. Thank you very much indeed, and enjoy the visit.